My name is Paul Nurse. I'm a biomedical researcher, presently President of Rockefeller University, a research institution in New York City, and also 2001 Nobel Laureate for Physiology or Medicine. And my job today is to put questions from the public to John Denham, Secretary of State, about how science and funding of science can be used to stimulate the economy. So, John, in my first question I have here, why do you feel that the UK economy is best served by a focus on near-term research, which can only be selected at best by rather imprecise forecasts of economic impact?
I'm not sure it would be. It seems to me that you have to have in the economy a mixture of fundamental research where you cannot possibly predict which bits will bring benefits, and some of it will simply bring intellectual knowledge, others will be the breakthroughs of the future. You also need near-term research, you need applied and translational research. I think there's two things about it. One is to make sure we have all of that range in the right places. And secondly, I think right across the piece, we should be conscious of economic relevance. Of course we'll do a great deal of research that has no identifiable economic relevance, but we also know, for example, that some areas of fundamental research are the reasons why international companies come here. They want to recruit people who've been trained in the very best of the world's research groups. There's nothing wrong with being aware of that and recognising how fundamental research contributes to the skills base and the prosperity of the country.
We have a question here about STEM qualified graduates and young researchers and the need for them for the country to remain economically competitive. The US, as I'm sure you know, has recently increased funding of young graduates and researchers, whilst in the UK, particularly the STFC, have been reducing funds for younger workers. Will DS follow the lead of the US and provide better funding for these younger researchers? Because it may risk, if they don't, a brain drain to the USA.
I think there's three questions wrapped up in one there. I mean, we have been increasing our research funding massively long before Obama's package. By the time we get to the end of the spending review, we would have doubled science research in real terms. That in itself is pretty impressive, I think. There is a particular issue about research careers, and in the higher education review, which we're doing at the moment, we've already commissioned work on research careers, and we've also identified the fact that there is actually no real ownership of postgraduate education policy in this country. Each of the research councils do different things, and I've no doubt that in the years ahead we're going to have a much more structured approach to making sure we have the right number of researchers coming through. The STFC has a particular issue, and that is that after years of very, very rapid growth in the number of new postdoctoral research grants, they're now curtailing that. These are decisions that research councils take, not the government. But we are investing more across the piece as a government. We do recognise the need to have clearer ownership of policy on research careers, but we also accept the research councils individually have to set their own priorities.
Recently there's been the Wakeham review about particle physics and astronomy and its state in the United Kingdom. And this has come out very well. So we have a question here, I imagine, from one of that community who's concerned that given the increase in funding recently in the US, should not the UK be increasing its support for these subjects rather than imposing cuts, which may again lead to a brain drain across the Atlantic?
It was my initiative to invite Bill Wakeham to do the report because there was concern obviously going to come from the community about aspects of STFC decisions. And Bill's report actually confirmed the strength of physics in the UK, and incidentally not just in UK physics departments, but spread in many other disciplines as well across the research sector, so that's very good news. The STFC's budget will go up by 13.6%. They're planning from the pre-CSR to the end of the CSR, increases in expenditure in astronomy, increases in expenditure in particle physics. So there is money going in. But they do have, as everybody else does in the research community, difficult choices to make. They have some very expensive kits, some very expensive research centres. They have grants for postdoctoral research. DS does not get involved in the decisions that are rightly theirs as the research councils. But I think we as DS I, as the Secretary of State, were right to ask Bill Wakeham to come in and produce his report. I think we've also been right to increase investment in the science budget in the way we have. But there comes a limit, I think, to the extent to which, a very clear limit, that we shouldn't be instructing research councils in the detail of what they do.
British inventiveness. How can we get a renaissance in British inventiveness? How can we bring it about? How can barriers be overcome?
I think we have a great strength. There's a strong cultural tradition of inventiveness and innovation, and we need to capture that. Last year in the White Paper Innovation Nation, we identified some of the barriers which are there at the moment. Firstly, we don't recognise a lot of innovation that takes place in our society. It's not just the pipeline from fundamental research to new products. We have it in the public services, we have it in many other areas. Government's got to be better organised. We have a huge government procurement budget. Now, if we always buy the cheapest bog standard, industry standard solution to a problem, there'll be no innovation. If we can put more government money into businesses which have got new solutions to new problems, if we procure in different ways, we create the markets for innovation. So that's one key part of how we get innovation, using government money, using government regulation to actually work in the real world and to fly. The other end of the trail, we've got to do, as we know, more in science education at the early years to captivate young people's imagination. And last week, Ed Balls and I were setting out plans to put more investment into science education, strengthen science, perhaps crucially in inviting a new expert group to advise us on this, how young people get a sense of what it is to be a scientist. What the difference between learning something and discovering something. And if we could do more of that in the school curriculum, we'd encourage more young people to go into science and engineering and mathematics and the related disciplines.
We have a question here. Somebody's been impressed with the Prime Minister's initiative aimed at near market dominance in higher education in the overseas market. And I think what he or she is asking for is something similar for digital media, bioengineering, or other industries which are especially strong. Can the department bring about a really big drive in supporting these new and important industries?
I think if the same person's been listening to Peter Mandelson talking about industrial activism or me talking about skills activism, the work that we're doing across government, they'll get a sense that that's where we're looking at the moment. That if we're going to be successful in low carbon technologies, if we're going to build up a more sustainable energy supply system, if we're going to make the best out of biomedicine and the life sciences or digital Britain, government's got to be better organised than we are at the moment to make the most of our capacity. And so it means looking in a concerted way at those systems, saying, have we got the fundamental research right? Are we doing the right applied research? Have we got the right links between the Technology Strategy Board and business? Is government buying the right things? Is my department generating the right skills system? Now, if we can get, not in every sector of the economy, but in some key sectors of the economy where we've got real competitive advantage, that sort of end-to-end approach, then yes, we can aim for exactly that sort of, whether we'll get market dominance, I don't know, but there's no reason why we shouldn't have market leadership and why we shouldn't actually be doing very well around the world in these areas. So I hope that particular questioner will see more of this approach in the future.
The Obama administration's just increased funding for scientific research, and that gives a greater opportunity for collaboration between American and English universities. So we have a question here. What can we do to help getting these universities to work closer together to boost economies of both countries? What can we learn from each other?
I think a number of things. I think the UK science bridges that the research councils have are very important. I think many of our most research-intensive universities already have a strong base of international collaboration. For example, UK researchers are the largest recipients of NIH funding from the US outside the United States itself. And I think many of our research-intensive universities rightly see themselves as global institutions that are UK-based, not purely as UK universities. So if we continue to build on those links, then I think we have great opportunities in key areas of science to develop stronger collaboration with the USA. In my department, we've now taken over the leadership of the Science and Innovation Network, which is a very strong team of people in the USA, always looking for the opportunities for collaboration between different groups of researchers. So I think the opportunity that opens up in the USA is one that we're well prepared to take advantage of.
Innovation often increases the risk of failure, particularly in the short term. I guess now, when the economy is so volatile, that many businesses will be tempted not to innovate. The questioner here is asking, what can be done to help them to innovate in these difficult times?
All of the available economic history says that the businesses that innovate in a recession will be the ones that come through strongly. The companies that batten down the hatches, don't think about their products, don't think about their services, are the ones that will lose out, because somebody else around the world is thinking about what the world's going to be like after the recession. Now, government's got to learn to, and some people, of course, will fail in doing that, and there's no doubt about that, but the successes will take us through. Government's got to become more confident about risk and innovation itself. One of the things that we did last year was ask the National Audit Office to look at innovation in government procurement, because MPs, ministers, civil servants are worried about the Public Accounts Committee. Yet we've got to create an environment where we know that some things you do in the public sector will fail if you're going to do new and innovative things. So we've got to get the message outside. Now is not the time to stop innovating, now is the time to accelerate innovation, to try out new ideas, because some of them will be the ones that take us out into the upturn and to a strong position in the future.